Welcome to Take the Exit, the podcast where we explore the stories that intersect with transportation in Illinois. Okay, so welcome to Take the Exit. This is IDOT's newest venture into podcasting. Today we have a special guest, Juan Pava, and I will let you introduce yourself to our audience.
All right, thank you, Bree. My name is Juan D. Pava. I am the Safety Programs Unit Chief at the Illinois Department of Transportation. I have been with IDOT for 16 years, since 2009, and most of it with safety.
Very good. So we are here today to talk specifically about work zone safety because this week is when we observe Work Zone Awareness Week across the United States, actually. And so your role as in safety, tell us a little bit about safety engineering for the layperson at home that isn't really familiar.
Sure, that's a great question, and it's one that comes up often. So specific to transportation, safety engineering is a discipline that focuses on evaluating data and try to come up with trends to try to mitigate hazards associated with transportation. So we look at vast amount of data and we try to find correlations and trends to help us determine, where we should implement projects and what kind of projects we should do to try to mitigate those hazards or mitigating risk.
Okay. So what are some modern safety standards in place that you could give examples of that we might just take for granted?
Yeah. So some of the things that we have pushed as of the last years are, rumble strips, for instance. The little things that make a noise when you're departing the road that tell you, hey, you're not where you're supposed to be. Get back to your lane. So that's one of those. We have applications of those temporary rumble strips for work zones in particular to try to get people to wake up. And we came up with those after analyzing data and looking that a big part of the incidents that resulted in fatalities and serious injuries were because people might not have been paying attention and hitting the back of a queue. So that's some of the countermeasures that we have been able to come up with after analyzing some of the data.
It seems simple, but powerful in terms of reducing fatalities.
100%, yes, because, we're trying to look at the contributing factors and what can we do to try to affect those contributing factors.
So when it comes to workers, what sort of protections are in place to protect them, the people working in the work zones specifically?
So, the way that we look at it first is, is there any hazards that can be removed altogether? So some of the protections that may not be very obvious to, anyone in particular is, doing nighttime construction, for instance. By doing, the work activities when the traffic volumes are lower, we're reducing some of that, innate risk of, a worker being there where there's more traffic. But some of the more obvious protections are, concrete barriers, for instance. Sometimes we need to take a lane, and if the traffic volumes are too high, or if there is some sort of hazard that can be eliminated, then we shield it with concrete barrier, or with let's call them truck-mounted attenuators to try to provide a buffer or some sort of more physical protection to the workers.
The truck-mounted attenuators are also known as TMAs.
That's
I've
correct.
learned that. So thank you for spelling out that acronym. We have a lot of those at IDOT, so that's appreciated.
Of course.
So when we've got workers in work zones, they're doing their jobs. Safety is a part of their job. So how do we equip them, train them to keep themselves safe while they're doing work in work zones?
Good question and very important. Safety is not only an engineering, or something that is achieved through engineering. We have to do a lot of education up front to make sure that people are doing the right thing out there. IDOT employees with field duties are required to go through training, within a certain window after they get hired. And we work, closely with the districts and within central bureaus to try to provide that training. So we put modules out there that are taught at all the different districts. And we also have at IDOT, we have a very comprehensive occupational safety training in which, they teach about, confined spaces, about, fall protection and other, potential risks to try to mitigate those through good training and good practices.
So let's fast forward you're in a work zone and there's also law enforcement that plays a part in protecting a work zone and making sure drivers are traveling safely through them. So talk a little bit about how law enforcement plays a part.
Yeah, so, as I mentioned a second ago, safety is something that needs to be looked at from, many different angles. Some of the, common countermeasures are either engineering countermeasures or educational countermeasures, but we also work closely with our law enforcement, partners across the state. Specifically for work zones, the presence of law enforcement in our work zones has become a very important tool. Because it allows us to, to be very reactive to risks that we experience in the field. So, from local police departments to Illinois State Police, different agencies have helped us try to drive the message to the road users that they need to change certain behaviors. That being, being distracted, going over the speed limit, not wearing their seatbelts. So they're a very important partner. In work zones in particular, we have an intergovernmental agreement with Illinois State Police in which they have agreed to provide services in our work zones as we request them to help us do a multitude of things. They help us enforce the laws in work zones to try to get people to do voluntary compliance of the speed limits. They also help us with increasing the awareness that there is change conditions up ahead. So sometimes they sit on the side of the road with the lights on, trying to let people know, hey, something changed. There's something changed up ahead.
That gets your attention.
100%.
Seeing a law enforcement vehicle on the side of the highway.
Blue and red
sure.
lights really, really work.
Yes.
And we want people to pay the same attention to amber and white lights as well. But they also help us protect the crews. They're there to get people to slow down, pay attention, and really follow the directions of the signs that are in advance of work zones and obey speed limits.
So we talked about law enforcement. There's other partners that we work with to keep work zones safe. Can you talk about who else we might coordinate?
Yeah. So we pride ourselves in having very good relationships with the stakeholders throughout our work zone industry. Just to give you a little bit of background, we have one of the work zone safety program in Illinois has one of the longest standing safety committees in IDOT's history. We have the work zone safety committee that has been meeting regularly since the late 1970s.
Oh, wow.
And in this, currently in that committee, we have so many stakeholders. We have people from multiple different state agencies, such as Secretary of State, Department of Education. We have state police. We have many internal IDOT offices. The Office of Communications is part of that committee as well. We have all the different districts and regions and central bureaus as well. But outside of state agencies, we also have many stakeholders from non-governmental entities, such as Broadcasters Association, truckers associations, labor groups, and many other construction industry associations. And it is a very good group of people that sit together around a table and discuss ideas to try to address safety risks that have been either observed through looking at the data analysis or observed through just driving through work zones in general. So
I had the privilege of attending the last work zone committee meeting, mm-hmm. and I was struck by the activity in particular where you looked at the year-to-date, or maybe it was all of 2024.
All of 2024, yeah.
Work zone fatalities. And you're looking at the specific details and really going one by one and kind of breaking down how it actually happened. And it just struck me like you're so close, your work is so close to tragedy. And I just wonder what that feels like to be involved in, have your work directly impact fatalities in work zones.
Yeah, being so close to the details of a human death is never easy.
Yeah.
And it's something that we take, that we take very seriously. And, in part, it's kind of like a way to honor the life of those people that passed. But also is to, like the life of every person that died in the war zone matters, or any roadway fatality. So, it's really hard for us to sieve through, all of the details within each crash report, each crash reconstruction, and learn, about so many details of each one of those fatalities and each one of those victims. It really puts, everything kind of into focus, into perspective, that each life that we lose in an incident, is someone that was, driving to work, trying to drive to school or to run an errand or whatever, and they never expected not to get back home.
It could be anybody.
It could be anybody.
Right.
It could be, like your mom, your dad, your brother, your kid, and is very hard. So that is kind of our way of honoring those fatalities, and also to get a group of people around the table that have a common goal in mind, which is for those to not happen again, and have this group of people to help us see if there's anything else that we can do, and understand that identification of trends within these tragic incidents is one of the many ways in which we can prevent, future fatalities or serious injuries in work zones.
So we've talked a lot about workers in work zones, but sometimes you're driving through a work zone and you don't see workers. Why is it still important to abide by the speed limits and everything else in work zones?
That question makes me chuckle a little bit, because that's one that, comes up frequently. And when I tell people what I do for a living, they typically tell me, like, so why do you have work zones out there when there's nothing happening? First, a clarification. Most roadway fatalities and serious injuries in work zones are road users, not workers.
Okay.
So, so it's really important to highlight that we do a lot of countermeasures and put safety measures and traffic control out there for both the people driving through the work zones and the people doing the work behind the barrels. So, so we set, speed limits in work zones for multiple reasons. And one of them is to limit the likelihood of a crash with a worker to result in a fatality.
Okay.
As you decrease the operating speeds, the likelihood of a crash resulting in a fatality is much lower. But that's only one of the reasons. There are many other reasons that why we would want people to go slower. Work zones typically mean change conditions. So
Okay.
you may have fewer number of lanes that are open. So you increase the density of the traffic in that single lane that is open. You may change the lane width. You may change how sharp the curbs are. So all of these different factors make it more difficult for drivers to navigate the work zone. So we want to, we set speed limits out there to decrease that risk of just the average driver in not being able to navigate the work zone. So that's why it's very important that people, when you see those speed limits, that understand that the reason why they're posted is because there's change conditions, and we want you to be able to navigate the work zone safely.
Great. So you are the expert, and we need to say it louder for the people in the back. Slow down and mind the signs in work zones. It's important no matter what.
100%. Every device on the side of the road, is there for a reason. So it's very important that you pay attention to the signage up there, and you take some time to digest what the sign is telling you and do what the sign is telling you as well. And we're doing everything we can to work closely with contractors to make sure that signs that are not applicable to the conditions at the time get taken down. So we're conveying the real accurate information to road users.
So the good news is that in Illinois, work zone fatalities have been on the decline over the past few years. What do you attribute that to?
So yeah, you're right. Over the past 5 to 10 years, we have seen a steady decline. So our trend line is looking quite positive. We're far away from that zero fatality, which is the goal. Last year we experienced the lowest number of fatalities in work zones that we have on record. Still 13 fatalities is 13 too many, and it's hard to pinpoint a single, I guess, countermeasure or a campaign to attribute that. But I think if there's one thing to highlight is the collaboration that we have with stakeholders and how willing people are to stand behind this goal of making work zones safely. So I think that's really what I would say, that the willingness of our stakeholders and industry partners to work with us to try to come up with innovative ideas to address safety, has been tremendous.
Okay, so final parting thoughts on work zones. What do you wish people knew about work zones?
I think that you kind of alluded to that a little bit, but I'd like to reinforce this, that most times, even when you don't think there's anything going on in a work zone, there's something. And there's a reason why the temporary traffic control is deployed. So, that could include, change site conditions. There could be open holes behind the barriers. There could be, maybe you had to remove a piece of guardrail to do some repair. There could be newly constructed, items that are just waiting to, fully cure. You may have a patch that is not fully cured. So something is happening, even though it doesn't look like there's anything in there. So I ask people that, please be patient when you see construction zones. Be courteous to other people, driving besides you. Give people the space to merge into an open lane if they're approaching a lane closure. And read the signs, obey the signs, and obey the speed limits, because your life can be in danger, or the people that are driving or working besides the open lane could also be in danger. So take your time, read the signs, and drive safely.
All right. Well, that's it for today. Thank you, Juan, for joining us. And hopefully everyone will safely observe Work Zone Awareness Week and pay a little bit more attention when they're traveling through Illinois. So thank you.
Thank you, Bria. Appreciate it.
Thanks for riding along with IDOT. This has been Take the Exit. For more inside information on transportation in Illinois, find us on social media or idot.illinois.gov.